The galaxy had forgotten the sound of war. For 3,000 years, civilizations had thrived beneath the banner of peace, a fragile balance enforced by the throne of the Galactic King. His empire stretched across 1,000 suns, his voice echoing to the stars like law itself. And yet, like all long peace, it had not forged unity. It had bred arrogance, decadence, and rot. The galactic species lived as though conflict was a relic of their primitive past. They built monuments instead of weapons, celebrated indulgence instead of discipline, and whispered that the age of war was gone forever. But history has never been kind to those who forget its lessons. The Galactic King sat upon a throne carved from the bones of worlds long forgotten. His crown bore jewels mined from dead stars, each one a reminder of conquests his ancestors had won before the peace was codified. He was not a man who believed in peace. He was a man who believed in power. And though 3,000 years had passed without great conflict, he hungered for it. He desired to remind the galaxy why kings were kings. Peace was weakness, he told himself. Peace was softness. The galaxy had grown soft, and he would make it sharp again by war. It was in this moment of hunger that a single word began circulating in his council chambers. Humanity, a young race, barely a flicker on the galactic timeline. They had only been granted recognition within the last century. To the old species, humans were amusing, a curiosity, like primitive creatures who had somehow crawled from their mud and fire into the stars. They were not respected, not feared, not even taken seriously. They were tolerated. And to the king, they were the perfect enemy, weak enough to serve as an easy target, yet visible enough to make a demonstration, crush humanity, and he would remind the galaxy that peace existed only by his choice. The Council of Alien Lords laughed when the king proposed war. War against humans? They scoffed. It will not be war, my king. It will be slaughter. To them, humans were no more threatening than children waving sticks. Their fleets were small, their technology young, their colonies sparse. The king listened to the laughter of his court and smiled. Laughter meant agreement. And so, with arrogance in his voice, he declared the 3,000-year peace broken. His words rippled across the stars, sent on every frequency to every species. The age of peace is over. By my will, the humans will be conquered. Their worlds will burn, their fleets shattered, and their name erased. The galaxy roared with excitement, not fear. War was entertainment when it was fought against an enemy no one respected. Armadas stirred from their slumber. War factories, dormant for centuries, were awakened. Millions of ships, gleaming with alien craftsmanship, surged toward the borders of human space. They expected surrender before resistance. They expected begging before fighting. They expected to face frightened children. Instead, they met something they had forgotten existed: defiance. The first clashes were small. Alien destroyers entered human systems, blasting civilian satellites, seizing colonies, mocking the defenders. Yet every time they advanced, they were met with human resistance far fiercer than intelligence had suggested. A mining station with no real weapons turned its drills into makeshift cannons and fought until its hull cracked open. A transport fleet, outgunned 10-1, rammed enemy cruisers rather than surrender. Even in defeat, the humans fought with savagery that unsettled their enemies. The aliens whispered uneasily, "These primitives bleed too slowly." Still, the king was confident. To him, these were nothing but sparks before the fire. He demanded reports, and his admirals delivered them proudly. The humans are resisting, yes, but their losses multiply. Their fleets are collapsing. Their colonies burn. Victory is inevitable. The king nodded and declared it proof that war was the cure for weakness. The galaxy agreed, cheering him as a hero reborn. What none of them understood was that humanity was not breaking. It was hardening. On Earth, in bunkers deep beneath the surface, leaders gathered. The United Systems Council, a coalition of human nations and colonies, did not weep. They did not beg. They watched the alien declarations of conquest with cold faces. For them, war was not new. It was familiar. Humanity's entire history was soaked in it. 3,000 years of alien peace meant nothing to them, because on Earth there had never been peace that lasted. Humanity had fought itself with swords, with rifles, with missiles, with nuclear fire. The galaxy thought war had been erased from history. For humans, it was written in their DNA. And so, a broadcast was made, across every frequency. To every alien ear, a message crackled from Earth. The voice was calm, steady, almost amused. You want war? Then you've chosen well. But remember, when you speak of war, you speak our language. We are humanity. We are the children of conflict. You think we will kneel? We will stand. You think we will beg? We will laugh. And when the ashes settle, you will remember that it was you who asked for this. The galaxy paused, confused. They had expected fear. Instead, they heard defiance. They heard amusement. They heard laughter. The king dismissed it as bravado. Let them laugh, he sneered. Their laughter will die with their worlds. He ordered his fleets deeper into human territory. Yet something had changed. The first reports of real battles began arriving, and they did not sound like the victories he had promised. Alien admirals described ambushes where human frigates appeared from asteroid fields, striking with precision, vanishing before counterattacks. They described boarding actions where human marines fought with animal ferocity unseen in galactic memory. They described battles where human commanders turned desperation into strategy, sacrificing ships to cripple entire fleets. Losses mounted, not enough to threaten the war, yet enough to unsettle the narrative of easy conquest. Still, the king held faith in numbers. His empire had billions of ships. Humanity had thousands. His armies stretched across 100 sectors. Humanity had only a handful of colonies. Yet as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the galaxy began to whisper. They whispered of strange reports. Alien fleets destroyed by smaller forces. Human soldiers captured yet unbroken. Laughter echoing in prison cells where silence should have been. It was not victory that unsettled the galaxy. It was humanity's refusal to fear. In hidden bunkers, in shattered colonies, in the depths of their warships, humans told each other the same truth. The galaxy had no idea what it had awoken. They had lived under peace for 3,000 years. Humanity had never known such a luxury. And now the galaxy would learn what it meant to face a species forged not in peace, but in fire. The galaxy had expected the war to end quickly. To them, humans were a minor nuisance, a primitive anomaly whose fleets were little more than relics compared to grandeur of civilizations that had stretched across the stars for millennia. But the opening months had already shattered that illusion. The Galactic King's fleets pressed deeper into human space. Yet each victory seemed hollow, each conquest marked not by surrender but by defiance. It was said in hushed tones that to fight humans was not to conquer, but to endure a storm that never seemed to end. The first reports of true shock came when the Seventh Armada, a fleet of 2,000 alien warships, encountered a human defense force of only 200. The outcome was certain, the mathematics undeniable. Numbers had always ruled warfare in the galaxy, and the aliens believed overwhelming force was absolute. But when the battle ended, nearly a third of the Seventh Armada lay in ruins, and the humans had slipped away, leaving behind only wreckage and a grim message carved into the remains of an alien flagship. We are not afraid of you. The galaxy, once laughing at humanity's defiance, began to whisper uneasily. Alien commanders reported tactics that made no sense to them. Humans would allow themselves to appear trapped, only to spring ambushes that turned their weakness into strength. They fought with unpredictability, their minds unconstrained by the rigid doctrines the other species had followed for thousands of years. A single human frigate would dive into the heart of an enemy formation, cripple a capital ship, and sacrifice itself without hesitation. To aliens who had grown in an age without true war, this level of ruthlessness was incomprehensible. The Galactic King, however, did not waver. His advisor spoke of concerning losses, of a resistance fiercer than anticipated, but he dismissed their fears with arrogance. They bleed, he declared. That is all that matters. 1,000 cuts still kill, no matter how sharp the knife. He demanded more fleets, more fire, more destruction. But behind the bravado, there were cracks forming in the Empire's confidence. The galaxy had not seen true war in 3 millennia, and now they were discovering that the humans had been practicing for it all along. Across human space, the people did not despair. They rallied. On Earth, billions worked tirelessly to forge weapons, retrofit old vessels, and awaken technologies long left dormant. Colonies once considered vulnerable outposts became fortresses bristling with defenses. Engineers transformed civilian craft into warships. Scientists adapted every scrap of knowledge into tools of survival, and soldiers, ordinary men and women, stepped forward in numbers the aliens could scarcely imagine. Humanity had endured plagues, famines, world wars, and nuclear fire. To them, war was not the end of civilization. It was a test that defined it. Alien prisoners began to whisper stories of their human captors. They spoke of soldiers who laughed as they marched into battle, pilots who joked even as they faced impossible odds, and commanders who studied alien strategies with unnerving speed, adapting in ways no simulation had ever predicted. One alien general, after being captured, reportedly asked his human interrogator why they did not fear the armadas descending upon them. The human smiled and said, "Because we fought worse ourselves." That answer spread like wildfire through the galaxy. To creatures who had forgotten conflict, the idea of a species hardened by endless war was terrifying. The alien fleets pressed on, but their victories began to taste like poison. For every human world burned, another rose in defiance. For every fleet destroyed, humanity struck back in ways the galaxy could not anticipate. Sabotage operations crippled supply lines. Sleeper cells infiltrated alien outposts, detonating explosives in their shipyards. Colonists refused to kneel, arming themselves with anything they could wield, turning every occupation into a nightmare. The king's commanders warned him that this was not conquest. It was quicksand. The harder they pushed, the deeper they sank. Yet the king was not content with reports of resistance. His pride demanded complete annihilation. He summoned his war council and demanded an explanation. Why does this war not end? Why does this species not break? His admirals faltered, for they had no answer. The truth was simple. They had underestimated humanity, not in numbers, not in technology, but in will. It was during this time that the galaxy began to truly see humanity for what it was. Historical archives were uncovered, shared among alien scholars desperate to understand their enemy. They read of human wars that had scarred Earth for centuries, conflicts where millions died in trenches, where cities were leveled by bombs, where entire civilizations rose and fell in fire. They learned of the world wars, the nuclear standoff, the endless regional conflicts that had never allowed humanity more than brief moments of peace. To the aliens, it was madness. To the humans, it was history. And history had taught them how to survive. On alien worlds, fear began to spread. Civilians who had once cheered the king's war now whispered that humanity was not like them. They were not soft. They were not docile. They were predators in a galaxy of prey. Merchants worried about trade routes, leaders worried about rebellions, and neutral empires began to question whether aligning with the king was wise. If humanity could resist the throne of the Galactic King, what else could they do? The battles grew larger, more desperate. Humanity, still outnumbered, refused to yield. In one infamous engagement, a fleet of human cruisers deliberately lured a massive alien dreadnought into orbit around a gas giant, then ignited the planet's unstable atmosphere with nuclear charges, engulfing the dreadnought in a firestorm that shattered it into molten fragments. The galaxy had never seen such reckless audacity. To the aliens, it was madness. To the humans, it was necessity. And it worked. Prisoners of war told stories of captured human soldiers who refused to break, even under torture. They mocked their captors, laughed in their faces, and when asked why, they answered with words that chilled the galaxy. "You think you can scare us? We are already scarred. Fear is our oldest companion. Pain is our oldest teacher. And war is our oldest friend." These words spread far beyond prison walls, carried by rumor and intercepted transmissions, until even species untouched by the conflict whispered them as if they were prophecy. The king grew furious. Reports of fear among his subjects enraged him. He demanded absolute obedience, silenced dissent, and doubled his war efforts. But the more he raged, the more humanity seemed to grow stronger. Every battle lost was a lesson learned, Every ship destroyed was an incentive to build 2 more. Unlike the Empire, humanity did not rely on tradition or ancient doctrine. They adapted with every strike, evolving faster than the galaxy could comprehend.